Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Gavox Aurora watch. Now this is a really different watch from this young brand Gavox, who we've covered a couple of times before. Their watches leading up to this were various affordable mechanical watches and quartz watches. They had a really nice kind of marine style watch we were really into. But this watch, the Aurora, is actually one I've been aware of that they've been working on since the beginning. It's been a very kind of long time in the making because it has in it a very interesting movement, a Soprod mechatronic movement that is a quartz movement that has a ton of functions in it, and Gavox actually worked with Soprod to kind of customize this movement to spec it out the way they wanted exactly, and currently have an exclusive on this movement. And it's a really fascinating watch the way it does things. It's really different than any other quartz you've seen before. It is pricier for quartz. This watch does come in at $838, and that is without VAT tax. So that does put it certainly on the high end for a non-mechanical watch, more than you might expect. But we'll go through this watch and you'll be amazed by the amount of functions in here. I promise you that. So because of actually how much it does, we're going to have a slightly different review today. We're just going to kind of dive into the aesthetics of the watch and then go through everything it does so you can really get a sense of all the cool stuff that this watch is going on. So let's just get to it. So the Gavox Aurora is a aviator style watch, and in true fashion it is on the large size, but as you can see also there's a lot going on the dial and the hand placement, so it needed a big dial which pushes the case out. So it measures 43 millimeters in diameter, about 51 millimeters lug to lug, and about 12 millimeters tall. So it's wide, a bit long, but it is quite flat, as it does have a quartz-based movement in here. They don't need a lot of thickness for a rotor or anything like that. So that does temper the size a bit. And then the case also comes in 3 different finishes. Obviously here we have steel and PVD, black, but then there's also a rose gold PVD available for kind of a funky dress option. These two clearly are kind of masculine and sport watches. I really like the PVD on this watch because at 43 millimeters, which I'll show you to you on my wrist later, that is large, but black I feel like always pulls things in a little bit, so that makes it just a little bit more visually, wear a little bit smaller. The case itself, very simple case, not a lot of intricate details going on. It just has a nice robust aviator style. So you have thick lugs, slab sides, a nice thick bezel, sapphire crystal here with AR coating. You have various pushers and a crown on the side. And as you see, these are not classic crown and pushers. I mean, they do various functions we'll go through, but the crown, you're never really kind of pulling out and turning it so much. It's really more of a large button and it has a bunch of other functions. But yeah, they're here and they give the watch kind of a chronograph look. Flipping the watch over now, you just have a simple steel case back here, labeling, nothing really too special going on there, but it's totally to be kind of expected. Now quickly looking at the dial, sorry to jump through this all, but there's really so much to cover, you'll see. You have a matte black dial with various details on it, and we'll get into these as we actually go through the functionality more too. But so you have a classic aviator style, which is defined largely by the 12-3-6-9, so it has that kind of instrument look to it. Very legible, very easy to read. Will kind of bring to mind the watches of Sin, the watches of Bell and Ross, some of those classic aviation brands. But this does have its own little twist to it too. You have large rectangles outside of the hours and individual minutes here. Double dots at 12 to make it easier at a glance to make sure you see the top angle. One thing I really like about this watch that does make it different to me is the way the hands are executed. And I actually know from talking to the owner of this brand that the hands were quite a trick to make, and he had to really work very hard on the engineering of these hands with a lot of different companies to make them just right. So they're actually aluminum hands. And they're beautifully crafted. This hand is an interesting shape to it. It's not your classic aviation kind of Roman sword style. You have this kind of interesting arrow shape. It's got a double arrow inside of it with an orange tip. You have these other hands that are black, white, lumen there. Then you also have orange on there. So just a lot going on. Really nice articulated forms. It's always cool to see a new hand set, and I think it does give this watch kind of a unique style that makes it feel a little different than other aviators that are out there, which is great. Now obviously you have a lot going on at 6 and 9. This has to do with the functionality that you're in. This is just a menu selector, so that goes through all the different modes in this watch, which we'll get to. And then this indicator here kind of transforms depending on your function. It is a retrograde hand and indices there. Sometimes it counts the date, sometimes it shows you the moon phase, sometimes it shows the hour and the day. So it does a lot of different things. Now also on the dial, you'll see it's a little bit tricky, but I like actually how this is executed. There are days of the week going around on the black in a light gray that is used in a date function we'll get to. They're very subtle. At a glance you don't see them, but then when you look in and kind of spend a second, you'll focus in, you'll see those there. And then on this chapter ring here, you actually have the months repeated 4 times. And that has to do with how the perpetual calendar function built into this watch also works. So yeah, now let's get into the functions because there's a lot to talk about. So now let's talk about the functionality of the Gavox Aurora. It has all these different modes in it, as you can see indicated on this dial at 6, as powered by this unique SOPROD movement. And what this does is really it creates this massively functional watch, which with all these functions that I think you might be able to find on some digital watches, but you're certainly never going to find on a mechanical watch. I don't even think that would be possible. And up until this point, you're not really finding on analog quartz watches. So it builds in all this functionality, but you get the look of a classic watch, which I think is very appealing to a lot of people, myself included. So now, of all these various settings, we'll go through them all. Home is kind of this, it's your basic setting, it's home time. And one thing that's worth noting here is that nothing's in motion. The battery is only being used in this watch when the motors are being driven, so when a hand is moving. So in home mode, it only does it at impulses. Obviously, at the minute, it moves the minute hand forward. You'll actually probably see it jump. The minute hand will jump. It doesn't slide forward. And that's all conserving energy. And actually, this watch has an amazing battery life of 4 to 7 years. So 7 years if you keep it really kind of inactive like this. 4 years, I guess, if you're using it an awful lot. But either way, 4 to 7 years is actually way better than many just time-only quartz watches. So that's just exceptional. It's great that they built that in here because it's more cost-effective, it's environmentally more friendly, just all those things. It's really, it's a modern movement. It's the way it should be built. So in this home mode here, you have the time, you have hour, obviously, and minute. And then this hand on the retrograde dial is telling you the date. So it's telling us right now it's the 23rd. And then this hand at 6 is telling you the mode. Now in home, let's say you're traveling, here you can set the time for your new time zone very easily. So you pull out the crown, and you'll see it actually kind of change. So the hour hand moved back. So it should really actually align with 2. That's my one complaint with this watch. I'll get into conclusions. But the hands often aren't quite where they're supposed to be. There's ways to adjust them, but they're always a little bit off, as I've found. So right now it's telling you it's 2 o'clock, and then the general minute. Now, if I push that, it'll actually jump in 15-minute increments. And what's great about that, it's very specific, but if there are various time zones in the world that are actually moving by 15-minute or half an hour increments. So most watches where the hand just jumps an hour don't allow you to deal with that. So this is really great if you're hopping around like the Himalayas or whatever. But either way, it's a unique function that is useful. So you can keep going around now. Then you can jump the hour with this button. Reset it, and you'll see it moves back into this scheme between now 4 and 5. So at 5:45, or 4:45 rather, it's about that far along in the hour. So that's how that works. Really cool. And now we're going to take a quick look at the second function. So you push the crown, you'll jump the indicator here, and you'll notice that really the only difference between the home mode and the second mode is that now this retrograde dial is turned into a second counter. And you'll see when it gets to 0 here, it's actually counting backwards right now, that the minute hand will jump a bit. And now it's counting back up. So it goes 0 to 30, and then 30 back to 0. And unlike a lot of watches, the second hand and the minute hand, and the hour hand for that matter, are actually linked up. So when this gets to 0, like I said, that'll actually move. So that is unto itself kind of an interesting function. But here, as we said, this is actually pulling more energy from the battery. And now we'll go into UTC mode by pushing the crown again. And in UTC mode, it'll bring up a second time zone. You could actually have that, at general mean time or reference time. Maybe that's your time back at your home if you're traveling. Home time then being kind of local time, and UTC being, your original home. And you can change, the hour here, minutes. Now, one thing that's different in this mode is that the hand here is now, it's no longer telling you the date or the second, it's telling you the 24 hours. So right now it's saying that it is 4 a.m., just about. In this mode, you can also, by pushing both of the pushers, go into sort of a setting mode where you can adjust the hands if they are off. That would actually make it very off what I just did. So you wouldn't want to do it just like that. But just for an example, this is the mode that you can go and kind of calibrate things in. The next mode is one of the cooler modes on the watch, and that is a timer mode. So push the crown and it'll go, and both of the hands now will go to just about 12. So what it's actually saying right now is that it's set for a 1 minute counter. So I'll show you how that works. So pull the crown out, now everything's set back to 0. This is totally, needs to be set now. Push the top crown here, or top pusher here rather, and the hour hand, which now will indicate minutes, jumps 1 minute forward. If I were to push this hand down here, you'll see that this small hand will jump 1, and then that's hours. So you could set this for actually a 31 hour, 59 minute timer. It's kind of a strange time, but you would just push these to set it. Now I'll just reset that one more time and start the minute. So now you start it with the top pusher, and you'll notice it's counting backwards. Now, when I first saw this, I thought that was just amazingly cool, as do most people, because you just really don't expect the hands to start running backwards. It's very neat that this has motors in it that can turn both ways. So now what will happen is, obviously, it'll count around. Right now we have a 1 minute timer, and when it gets to 1 minute, you'll see it'll do something funny. Okay, so it's just about done, and you'll see when it hits 0 that the watch will tell you the timer's up in a very cool way. So yeah, it flutters the hands around, and what would happen is if I'd started the timer and had gone to a different mode, like back to home or second, it would have done that when the timer had ran out. So that's just really cool. The one thing I would have liked to see, though, is maybe a vibration in here, because it is very easy to just not be looking at your watch at that time. So that one little extra indication would have made it all the more effective. Next up is the chronograph. So push the button, it says chronograph. The hands don't change from the timer to the chronograph, so it's just basically set at 0. So now this is as you'd expect a chronograph. So you push the top pusher here, and the minute hand becomes a second hand for the chronograph, and the hour hand actually becomes a central minute hand. I love that. I love central minute hand chronographs. That's why I'm a big fan of the Lemania 5100 watches, which I collect, and it's not something you see very often. To me, it's much more efficient, or much more readable, I should say, because having 60-minute counter is just generally an easier way to time things, and having it on the central axis just makes it that much more visually at a glance, once again, legible. If you're walking around timing something, it's much easier to see 45 minutes right there than it is to see on a little sub dial. So then this hand, the small hand at 9, counts hours, and it goes up to 31 hours. So once again, you can have a 31-hour, 59-minute counter, which is just it's a strange amount of time, but it is a nice long amount of time. So we'll see this, we'll jump ahead now. So yeah, I just clicked ahead. So now on top of this, you can pause the watch, the chronograph at the top pusher, start it again. You can split it. So it'll keep counting there. And a really cool function, it has like a sort of a flyback function. So if I push and hold the top pusher, it'll fly back to 0, and when I let go, it'll start again immediately. What's really cool about this is actually, if you think about timing something's pushing a button, and depressing it isn't the fastest way to do it. But if you just start it, push it, and hold it, it actually waits for you to let go to start. And just letting go is actually, I'd say, a much more responsive way to start a counter. So that's a really cool thing to have here. So stop it and just reset it. The next mode is date. So click that. And now the hands are actually telling you the day and the date, as well as the month, and actually the whether or not it is a leap year. So to go through this all, let's see. You have the hour hand indicating that it is Sunday. On this, you'll see Sunday is between 4 and 5 here. You have the hand at 9 indicating that it is the 23rd, so it's Sunday the 23rd. Then the minute hand is actually pointing to the date, or the month rather, and that is on the chapter ring here. So it's pointing to August in there. That might be hard to see with the camera just because it is very small in there, but so it's indicating right there, the day, and the month. Now, there's 4 different years it could be pointing to. If it was pointing to this last year here that is in white, it'd be indicating that it is a leap year. So in fact, 1 year to a leap year. And that is a perpetual calendar, so it's going to keep going for a long time. Now with the moon function, the very last function on the watch, it'll tell you the moon phase as indicated on this small hand here. One other cool thing about the various functions is that if you're in any of them, let's say you're in UTC and you want to jump back to home, you just push the crown and it'll automatically jump back. So, just showing that from more like, timer, push it, hold it, and back to home. That just makes it kind of easy to, get back to the time simply. On the wrist, the Gavox Auroras wear quite well for a large watch. So it's a 43 millimeter diameter, as I'd said, and about 51 millimeters lug to lug, which is certainly large. And I've tried on various watches, I'd say, with the same proportions before, and they felt too big. But I really don't think this feels or looks too big on my wrist. And I think this has to do a lot with proportioning, but also the contouring of the lugs. So the 51 millimeter lug to lug, these do curl down a bit, so they kind of contour with your wrist, so you don't get that kind of plane of a watch over your wrist. There's no overhang, so that immediately makes it look better. And then, it's a big dial watch. You have these hands that are pushed all the way out to the edge, and the movement itself, wants to be in a large watch, plus the aviator style. Aviators, even more than pilot watches, I'd say, have a kind of demand a larger style. They have this instrument look, so they look most appropriate in, medium to large watches, 43 probably being about the max I'd personally be comfortable with. But, in the end of the day, it just all matters kind of how it looks and feels, and I do feel like this is a well-sized large watch. And it's great looking. If you like aviator style, which I certainly do, this is a nice variation on it. It's a mix of the kind of classic look with this kind of technical element of these menus, and then a really, really great handset, as I had said. So, these great little spots of orange on here. Just overall, just a very attractive looking aviator watch. Also, just to quickly look at the buttons here, everything's very pushable, it's easy to get to, nothing really digs into the wrist too much. I'm really grateful for that, because that can get irritating also on large watches if you get that kind of dig into the back of your wrist there. Now looking at the strap, the Auroras come with 22 millimeter straps, a 22 millimeter lug width there. There's a bunch of different strap options, but I really, really like these two-piece leather straps they have. It's with it's like an oily nubuck leather, so it's matte, it has a nice kind of texture to it. Beautiful coloration. You can see the texturing of the skin in there, so it's a nice whole grain leather, or full grain leather rather. The colors here are perfect. So the sandy beige looks amazing with the black here. I think it's a perfect combination. And the construction of this is really fantastic. So, it's got a nice bit of padding in here, so it's thick by the lug. And while there's like a stiffness to it, it's not uncomfortable stiff. Sometimes you get watches and they're stiff and they kind of stick up like that, which is very unpleasant. This doesn't. It forms to your wrist nicely. A nice broad stitch here. And you'll notice the edges are actually folded around and then sealed with the lining on the back. And that is actually a much more complicated way to do it. And it just gets you a very, very clean edge, which has no paint on it. So it's just leather all around, which is nice looking. They also fit them with deployant clasps. I love this option. I think it just is a nice way to kind of finish it off. Like I said, this watch is a bit more expensive for, that's kind of like for a non-mechanical watch at $838. So having these little details like a deployant clasp just, add to the overall look and feel. It's PVD on this model to match with the PVD case. Looking now at the steel watch we had, this one came on a chocolate brown. And I believe you can kind of actually mix and match these. You can choose which one you want when you order it. But just to show you, this one you can see it's really oily. There's some nice pull up going on here. So just a cool, very rugged, vintage looking leather. And actually just so you can see more closely how those edges are just so clean. The leather folded underneath, and then a really clean backing there too. Just, it's a great strap. I don't know where these are made, but I think they're the perfect pairing. If I'd seen this on a watch that was $3,000, $5,000, I'd still be very happy with it, to be honest. To wrap up, the Gavox Auroras are this incredible new feature-packed watch from a relatively young brand. And I have to commend Gavox for putting the energy and effort into making a watch, taking a risk, and making a watch that is so kind of unique and different and focused on this movement and really, having this abundance of functionality. You usually find only in digital watches from brands that you could expect to find them from. Not really a micro brand, not a brand that's only been kind of doing things at kind of a lower price point, and going for it, and making it Swiss made, making it with a Soprod movement, very respected movement maker, as I'm sure you all know. So it's a really kind of high quality watch. And while the price, $838, I mean, it's an interesting price. It's a conversation to have into itself. I think a lot of people might scoff because you want your quartz watches or whatever to be very inexpensive, and 800 price range is more typically where you'd find mechanicals we discussed, but the amount of functionality in this watch is incomparable. And it's clearly a unique movement. It's clearly a movement that does a lot of different interesting things, and it's all in the Swiss-made package. So I think there's a really strong argument to make for it. It's just a very unique watch. I think one that's going to be self-selective. It's not for everybody, but for people who love, who want to be able to do all these different things, want the multiple time zone capabilities, want the timer, want the chronograph, want the moon phase. I mean, you can just go on and on. I mean, it's just exceptional and feature rich, and all in a very attractive package. So needless to say, I think it's an extremely cool watch, one I like a lot, one that I could easily see wearing while traveling in particular. So yeah, please read the full review on Worn&Wound. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you.